you. Good evening and welcome to the June 26th meeting of the Falmouth Conservation Commission. This meeting is being held virtually via Zoom video conference and is also being broadcast by FCTV on cable channel 9. As this meeting is being recorded by Zoom and broadcast by FCTV, please be cognizant of what you say, how you say it, and what can be seen and heard in your background. We're missing one commissioner at the moment. However, we have enough for a quorum. We're moving forward. Just a reminder for commenting, I'll call on each of you in turn, and that all votes have to be done by roll call. So when I call your name, please state your name and your vote for the record, even if you've made the motion or the second. To our public participants, at any time during this meeting, you may enter any comments or questions via the chat function. At the appropriate time, they will be read into the record. If you'd like to be heard on a specific hearing, let us know via the chat function. Then at the appropriate time, I will call for public comment. When you are selected, you will be moved into the hearing as a participant. As such, you must have your video enabled, be succinct and respectful of others. Public comments will be limited to 3 minutes each. Regarding RDAs, under a request for determination of applicability, the applicant is asking the Commission to determine if the provisions of the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and/or the Falmouth Wetlands Bylaw apply to their proposed project. A negative determination is that the provisions of the Act and/or the bylaw do not apply. Therefore, the project may proceed as proposed. However, a positive determination means that the provisions of the Act and/or the bylaw do in fact apply and/or may require some conditions. Therefore, the project would require a notice of intent application. So as an applicant, you kind of want to hear a negative. And for the benefit of anyone waiting for a particular item tonight, so that you're not waiting unnecessarily, the following RDAs and hearings are expected to be continued. 641 West Falmouth Highway, 210 Quistit Ave, 4 Whittemore Ave, 63 Santuit Road, 380 Edgewater Drive, and 30 Uncantina Road. And with that, first item tonight, vote minutes, June 5th, 2024. Anyone?
Mr. Chairman, I reviewed the minutes. I didn't have any additional comments. I move approval. Patton.
I'll second Gladfelter.
All right, we have a motion and a second to accept the minutes. I'm sorry, as submitted. Questions or comments? We're voting to accept the minutes. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Maury?
Carla Hawks, aye.
Ron?
Driscoll, aye.
Thank you. It is unanimous with this quorum. We have accepted the minutes of June 5th. Next up for vote minutes, June 12th, 2024. Anyone?
Mr. Patton, Mr. Chairman, excuse me, I reviewed the minutes and I move approval. Patton.
Driscoll, second.
All right. We have a motion and competition for a second to accept the minutes of June 12th. Questions or comments? We're voting to accept the minutes. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Maury?
I wasn't there, so I'm going to abstain.
Okay. Ron?
Driscoll, aye.
Steve?
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous. We have accepted the minutes as submitted. Thank you, Kristen. Next up, request for a continuance for determination of applicability. First up, Arthur M. Hawks, 641 West Falmouth Highway, West Falmouth, Mass, for permission to install a pool and construct a garage. Alyssa.
The applicant has requested a continuance until July 31st.
I'll move Gladfelter.
Patton, second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to continue this RDA until July 31st. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Maury,
I recuse myself.
Ron,
Driscoll, aye.
and Steve.
Patton, aye.
We have continued this until July 31st. Next request for continuance. Sorry if I get this wrong. Allison Mankivsky, 210 Quistit Avenue, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to conduct invasive species management. Alyssa,
The applicant has requested a continuance until July 10th.
So moved, Harlow Hawks.
Patton, second.
all right, we have a motion and a second to continue this until July 10th. Questions or comments? We're voting for the continuance. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Maury,
Harlow Hawks, aye.
Ron,
Driscoll, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous with this quorum. We have continued this until July 10th. Next up, Michael Smith, 4 Whittemore Avenue, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to abandon or remove existing sewage disposal system and install a new IA Title V sewage disposal system. Alyssa,
The applicant has requested a continuance until July 10th.
So moved, Harlow Hawks.
Driscoll, second.
sorry, did you say the 10th?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, we have a motion and a second to continue this till July 10th. Questions or comments? We're voting on the continuance. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Maury,
Harlow Hawks, aye.
Ron,
Driscoll, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous with this quorum. We have continued this until July 10th. Next up, 63 Santuit LLC, 63 Santuit Road, North Falmouth, Mass. Excuse me, for permission to lift an existing house in order to raise the height of the foundation. Alyssa,
The applicant has requested a continuance until July 31st.
So moved, Harlow Hawks.
Driscoll, second.
all right, we have a motion and a second to continue this until July 31st. Questions or comments? We're voting on the continuance. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Maury,
Harlow Hawks, aye.
Ron,
Driscoll, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous with this quorum. We have continued this RDA until July 31st. Next up, our request for continuance under a notice of intent. First up, Kevin Cusack's 380 Edgewater Drive East, East Falmouth, Mass, for permission to construct an attached garage. Jen,
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the applicant is requesting a continuance until July 10th.
So moved, Gladfelter.
Patton,
Harlow
second.
Hawks, second.
all right, we have a motion and a second to continue this hearing until July 10th. Questions or comments? We're voting on the continuance. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Maury,
Harlow Hawks, aye.
Ron,
Driscoll, aye.
Steve.
Aye.
It is unanimous with this quorum. We have continued this hearing until July 10th. Next up, Paul G. Panarello and Jane Panarello, 30 Uncantina North, West Falmouth, Mass, for permission to stabilize an eroding coastal bank and to reinstall previously required mitigation. Jen,
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the applicant is requesting a continuance until July 17th.
So moved, Harlow Hawks.
Driscoll, second.
we have a motion and a second to continue this until July 17th. Questions or comments? We're voting on the continuance. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Maury,
Harlow Hawks, aye.
Ron,
Driscoll, aye.
Steve.
Van Nuys,
It is unanimous with this quorum. We have continued this hearing until July 17th. Next up, requests for determination of applicability. First up, Hughes Turner LLC, 41 Little John Road, East Falmouth, Mass, for permission to install a Title V compliant sewage disposal system. Alyssa,
Staff recommends a -3 under the state and a -2 under the bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Carla Hawks, so moved.
Gladfelter, second.
we have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. Questions or comments? We are voting to accept staff's recommendation. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Maury,
Carla Hawks, aye.
Ron,
Driscoll, aye.
Steve.
Van Nuys,
It is unanimous with this quorum. We have accepted staff's recommendation. Next one has been previously continued, brings us to Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, 569 Woods Hole Road, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to repair areas of broken and loose pavement. Alyssa,
Staff recommends a -3 under the state and a -2 under the bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
So moved, Carla Hawks.
Driscoll, second.
all right, we have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. Questions or comments? We're voting. Betsy.
I recuse myself from this.
Yep, I'm sorry. Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Maury,
Carla Hawks, aye.
Ron,
Driscoll, aye.
Steve.
Van Nuys,
We have accepted staff's recommendation. Next up, Brian Halligan, 110 Oyster Pond Road, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to conduct invasive species management in accordance with Mass DEP number 25-4567. Alyssa,
Staff recommends a -3 under the state and a -2 under the bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed, and we also recommend a -1. A +1. The applicant has requested work in perpetuity, and we find it should only last the typical 3 years of the RDA.
Carla Hawks, so moved.
O'Brien,
Gladfelter,
second.
wow. All right, is that clear? We're voting on the -3, -2, and a +1. So we're only going to give them the 3 years, not perpetuity. All right, we're voting. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Maury,
Carla Hawks, aye.
Ron,
Driscoll, aye.
Steve.
Van Nuys,
It is unanimous. We have accepted staff's recommendation. Next up has been previously continued, brings us to Karsten Bose, 46 Waterside Avenue, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to continue invasive species management in accordance with Mass DEP number 25-4367. Melissa,
Staff recommends a -3 under the state and a -2 under the bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed. We also recommend a +1 denying work in perpetuity.
Carla Hawks, so moved.
Gladfelter, second.
all right, we have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation of a -3, -2, and a +1, allowing only a 3-year, not in perpetuity. Questions or comments? We're voting. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Maury,
Carla Hawks, aye.
Ron,
Driscoll, aye.
Steve.
Van Nuys,
It is unanimous with this quorum. We have accepted staff's recommendation. Next up, Richard Phillips, 26 Sycamore Street, East Falmouth, Mass, for permission to construct an addition. Alyssa,
Staff recommends a -2 under the state and bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed, and this project solely takes place in an AE flood zone.
Carla Hawks, so moved.
Driscoll, second.
all right, we have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. Questions or comments? We're voting. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Maury,
Carla Hawks Eye.
Ron,
Driscoll, aye.
Steve.
Matt and I.
It is unanimous with this quorum. We have accepted staff's recommendation. Next up, Connor McLaughlin, 110 Scranton Avenue, Falmouth, Mass. For after-the-fact permission to construct 2 structures and for permission to restore a paved area with vegetation. Alyssa,
Staff recommends a -3 under the state and a -2 under the bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Carla Hawks so moved.
Driscoll second.
we have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. Questions or comments? We're voting. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Maury,
Carla Hawks Eye.
Ron,
Driscoll, aye.
Steve.
Matt and I.
It is unanimous. We have accepted staff's recommendation. Next up, Little Island Trust, Gray Court Lane and Studio Way, West Falmouth, Mass. For permission to replace utility poles, install underground electrical utility conduits, transformers, and handholds, and associated trimming of tree branches and shrubs. Alyssa,
Staff recommends a -3 under the state and a -2 under the bylaw. Resource area boundaries are not confirmed.
Carla Hawks so moved.
Driscoll second.
all right, we have a motion and a second to accept staff's recommendation. Questions or comments? All right, we're voting. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Maury,
Carla Hawks Eye.
Ron,
Driscoll, aye.
Steve.
Matt and I.
It is unanimous. We have accepted staff's recommendation. Next up, our continued request for determination of applicability. First one had been previously continued, brings us to Kristen Bard, 110 Alder Lane, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to remove poison ivy. Melissa,
The applicant has withdrawn their application without prejudice.
all righty then. All right, that brings us to requests for hearing under notice of intent. All hearings of the Falmouth Conservation Commission are held simultaneously under the authorities of the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Falmouth Wetlands Bylaw. Although a single decision of the commission is issued, it represents a separate decision under each authority. As a reminder, public commenting is limited to 3 minutes. So I encourage you to stay within the purview of this board, which are the rules and regulations of the Wetlands Protection Act and the Falmouth Wetlands Bylaw, and how they pertain to a particular application. The chair reserves the right to stop any commenting that is disparaging or inconsequential to the hearing. First up, Eric and Sabina Hamry, 218 Ecopesket Road, East Falmouth, Mass, for permission to construct a dock. Jen.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I've promoted Mike Berselli up to present his project. Good evening, Mike.
Good evening. Good evening, commissioners. For the record, Mike Borselli, Falmouth Engineering, and I represent the applicant. With your permission, I'd like to, well, someone's happy I'm here. With your permission, I'd like to share my screen.
Yes, sir.
The applicant owns the property at 218 Acapesket Road. It has an existing single-family dwelling, garage, driveway, other typical appurtenances. It has water frontage on Green Pond. Wetland resources include land under the ocean, land containing shellfish. There's a narrow band of salt marsh. There is a coastal bank, and there is land subject to coastal storm flowage. In this case, AE 15 and AE 13 are in the area of the proposed activities. This is a proposed private recreational fixed pier. We went through the typical process of performing water depth measurements to verify sufficient depth at time of low tide. We have sufficient depth at the terminal end of the proposed T shown in the drawing as where I'm pointing. It's just over 3 feet. It's approximately 3.5 to 3.7 feet at the terminal end. And the overall extent of the pier length from the upper edge of Salt Marsh to the end is 82 feet. Your regulations allow up to, but not more than 100 from either the upper edge of Salt Marsh or mean high water, whichever is more restrictive. Passing that test, we engaged the services of, well, I should first say, we reached out to Greg Fraser, the harbor master, to make sure there were no issues of navigation with him. He had no issues or concerns with regard to navigation, and we submitted his comments as part of the application. We then secured the services of PM Newbert to do a shellfish and eelgrass survey and associated report, which she did, and it was determined that there's no significant densities of shellfish in the area. In accordance with your regulations, there's no eelgrass. So all regulations for private recreational docks are met. The dock itself is 4 feet wide. It starts just at the top of the slope where I'm pointing, and it is elevated. I'll share the profile with you. It is elevated from the point of beginning over the slope. It's providing 6 feet of separation from the underside of the stringers to the salt marsh. The Division of Marine Fisheries has a policy that you must provide 1.5 times the width of the dock from the bottom of the stringers to the salt marsh. So 4 multiplied by 1.5 is 6. So there's a 6 foot minimum separation. There's also a related regulation by Division of Wetlands and Waterways that says you must provide 5 foot of clearance minimum at the point of mean high water for public access. So because of the separation from salt marsh, we're more than meeting the 5 foot separation from the bottom to mean high water. So this section is elevated, then it'll transition to stairs, and then it'll continue to be a fixed pier all the way to its terminal end. And at the end, there will be a 6 by 16 T as shown on the plan view here. The maximum area of the T allowed by your regulations is 100. This is 96. We were able to bridge entirely the salt marsh with, we're either using 6 by 6 posts where there's no tile action to support the walkway. So the salt marsh is bridged, and then it's 10-inch pilings spaced out at 16 feet on center for the remaining part of the fixed pier. So I think that this project meets all the standards in your regulations for private recreational docks, and I'm happy to take questions.
All right, Jen.
I don't have too many questions, Mike, but there were a couple of points made in the staff report. Float, boats stored on the bank, greenhouse. I've just addressed those and we should be okay.
Sure, that float, my client doesn't even live here. He's on the West Coast, and he doesn't even know about the float. So that's most certainly should be removed. And I understand that the greenhouse is in a state of disrepair, or it might have been removed since the survey was done, so we can revise the plan to remove that from the plan as well. But most certainly the float should be removed, and that would, of course, be expected to be a condition.
Alyssa, what kind of boat was stored on the bank? Is it like a kayak or is it like a dinghy or?
It's like a small dinghy. I think there might have also been a kayak. That's probably where the homeowners have just stored them as easy access to the water at this point. Obviously, should the dock be approved and installed, those would just need to be not stored on the vegetated bank.
Okay. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Alyssa, do you have anything additional?
Nothing to add. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Commissioner comments. Betsy,
No questions or comments. Nice, brief, short presentation from Mike.
Thank you.
I agree. Kevin,
Same comment.
Maury,
I just had one comment that the mooring field, you should put the water depths where the mooring field is. I know it's plenty of water there, but it'd be nice to have it. And one question I did have, where the public access is, and I know you have to provide it, it's right over the only section of salt marsh. Is there any way you could put it on behind it, maybe raise it up or something?
There is one section right here between the salt marsh and these posts where you can walk through that. You're not actually crossing.
Yeah, and do you think people are actually going to do that? Because they can walk wherever they want. I don't know, just a concern. It was just odd that the only salt marsh, that's the little band that's there, is where you're putting the public access to trample all over it.
Well, public could gain access here too, or I could, if it's a big concern, we could raise this one more section.
I don't know, just, that was my only concern.
Yeah,
And if nobody else has it, oh well, it's all fine. And the lighting should be downward lighting. Thank you.
yep.
Mike, could you put stairs on either side where you were gonna raise the section? Instead of raising it, put stairs?
We'd rather not do the stairs because then that's another potential hazard for the public climbing up and across the dock, and then you have to, it would be in the tidal zone where the stairs are. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Can you bring your profile back up? If you raise that other section, it looks like the grade goes down. Would that be too deep of water for them to get underneath, or?
We'd have to raise this one section up to here. You have to then imagine these stairs being here going down. So this, you know, they'd then be walking. If I were walking along the shore, I'd be walking in this area. It's a little tight here, but you can walk through.
Maury, would you like to see the other one raised? We can condition it, Mike. You wouldn't have to come back. We can condition just the revised plan to raise that one section.
Mhm.
I'm just one opinion. I just, ironically, it's truly the only little band of salt marsh
Okay,
left.
well, I guess we can talk about it in deliberations and we can just ask for a revised plan, Mike.
Okay.
Alright.
All right.
There is something else to take into consideration on that when you do deliberate. You do make reference to aesthetics. So the more sections that are elevated way up in the air, you know, it can become a bit much to all the other, you know, neighbors and the houses that are trying to look at the view down the river. Just my 2 cents.
Maury,
Well, and the other thing is that if they're all raised, they might still go where the path of least resistance, which is the higher ground, which is where the salt marsh is. So,
Out of the water.
well, maybe a little sign, please don't tromp on the salt marsh, might be a solution. Thank you.
Ron,
No comments. Thanks, Mike.
Steve,
I'm sure he said it or wrote it, but you're not gonna, you're gonna drive the piles and everything. So everything's gonna be done from the water, just,
The landwood sections not in the tidal zone will be installed from the upland by, hand men, workmen, workwomen. And the other work would be done from barge. And there was a comment from DMF about the barge floating at all tides, some limitation on that. So there would be certainly expected to be a condition to that effect. They are
Thank
proposed,
you.
pilings are proposed to be driven.
I saw that. For the record, if nothing else, thank you.
Jen, anything in the public chat function, please?
Nothing in the public chat pertaining to this project, Mr. Chairman.
I'll make a motion to close the hearing and take it under advisement.
Harlow,
Gladfelter.
All right, we have a motion and a second to close the hearing. Any other questions or comments? All right, we're voting to close the hearing. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Maury,
Aloha, aye.
Ron,
Driscoll, aye.
Steve.
That night.
It is unanimous. We have closed this hearing. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Is this it for you tonight, Mike?
I have one more at 442 Acapesca.
Oh, yep, that's right. Okay.
Please contain your excitement, though, when we close your hearing. It's a little overwhelming. The next one has been previously continued, as has the following one. Brings us to Leo Perito Jr. and Diana Perito, 14 Avenue A, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to repair a damaged seawall and plant beach grass. Jen.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I am promoting Tom Bunker up to present his project. Leo, I see you in the audience. If you would like to be promoted up to a panelist, can you raise your hand function, please? Okay. And I am promoting the property owner, Leo Perito. Evening, Tom.
Good evening. I see Leo coming up there. Yeah, for the record, name is Tom Bunker with BSS Design, and we performed this survey through the plan. For Leo, he wants to do repair work to a seawall, which was damaged by, you recall, several storms during the winter and spring. And he had some damage to it, shifting the rocks and washing out sand and stone landward of the seawall, and wiping out a large area of beach grass and some lawn. And so he wants to put that back. I will, if I may, share my screen, show you a
Yes,
couple of
sir.
things.
Excuse me.
See where I am here. Well, there's the GIS plan, the town GIS, just showing where it is. Avenue A, if you take Davisville Road all the way down below Minot Road, hit this beautiful little section of a kind of a beach community. Leo's house is here at number 14. And it's protected. It's an older lot that's protected by some seawall around here. And there's some other groins along the way. Let me pull up. Our plan. So you can see there is the house. There's a stone seawall going off the lot to the west and wrapping around this lot. A little bit of a groin sticking out there also, and then back landward some. And so the house has been here for many years. And the stonework has been there for many years, but this is the storms got the better of it. So there's this area in this hatched area is all of what was the surface, mainly beach grass. You see the line of the former lawn line running along here and some existing lawn. And the erosion did get into the lawn area. Mainly it eroded out this several feet deep in some areas. And so what Leah was proposing to do is lay down, the contractor would lay down steel plates coming in from Avenue A in the driveway and across the lawn, the steel plates to protect the surface, and bring in loads of the some of the larger the trap rock, which backfill in behind the wall, filter cloth behind the wall, and then fill in with the ordinary borrow fill, and then finish off the top in two areas. One area with basically sand going in through here, which would be planted with the beach grass plugs, and then a little bit of it here and along here with some loam and reestablish the lawn area in that area. Have a section through here. There's some 6 to 8 inches of loam where we restore the lawn, and then sand and the beach grass plugs, and the stones would have to be jostled around a little bit to get some filter cloth down there to try to hold the soil back in, and some of the trap rock behind it, and fill in the the chinks in between the stones as much as possible to fix that up and get that back going, at least for the summer. Part of this under an RDA for some previous work years ago, there were some beach plums planted as a result of that, and several washed out. There were 4 remaining here, and there were 6. So we plant 2 more here, and there are 3 remaining, and none remaining here. So all 6 have to be planted in this. I think that corner there got the brunt of at least some of the storm coming in from this direction, took the shrubs out. He had already lifted this removable beach stairs. He had already lifted that out for the winter, so that did not get damaged, but you must have put it back. He did put it back, just leaning against it, but it's not staked in at the moment. But that will get put back permanently for the season, but not permanently, but put in more stable position than what it is now. So this is all work in a velocity zone. It's just to put back how it was back as of last fall and early winter before the storms hit. Staff mentions that the proposed shrubs, the existing and proposed shrubs will not do very well, and actually suggested possibly Rosa rugosa in place of planting them. And so Leah would be happy to plant whatever the staff or the agent Alyssa or Jen would see as working the best there. He said that originally when the beach grass was put in, some of that beach plum was put up along the front, and it didn't work up here at all, and so it got moved to a somewhat safer location back there. But it's not flourishing, and maybe the Rosa rugosa would do better. Staff also noticed that they have some old photos, maybe from when that RDA was done, showing some trees in this location, and they're part of the staff report that you probably already have. And actually, if you look at that, many of the trees there's a wood pile right along this property line. It didn't show it, but if you'll notice that many of the trees are on the east side of that property line, and they're actually over on this lot, which is covered by a lot of bittersweet. But there are, the trees were in decline off to the side. Let me see if I can. This was the result of after a storm in April of 2023, where that tree blew over. Trying to get the other picture, doesn't want to scroll over, but you can see off to the left in this picture on the next lot beyond that wood pile, there's bittersweet growing there, and it still is. But there were trees here. You see the cedar tree blew over in 2023, and the other trees had been covered with bittersweet. But Leo does want to plant more trees, and so he would welcome a visit. We could propose cedar trees or whatever, but he would welcome a visit from with the staff to determine what trees would best be planted there to serve everybody's purpose. So that is the project as proposed. Well, Leo, I'll take questions, and Leo can if there's anything I can't answer.
Leo, is there anything you want to add at this point?
I think Tom summed it up.
All right. Jen,
Yes, Mr. Chair, and Leo, I know you've struggled over the years to get the bayberries. I remember you going back and forth with Mark and the beach plums, so we can meet you on site and try to find a more suitable plant, something a little hardier that might survive there. And we'd be happy to meet you on site to replace some cedars over there and give you a little shade, if you want shade with the cedars, but we would like to see a couple cedars back.
Perfect.
Other than that, I have no additional questions, Mr. Chairman.
all right. Alyssa,
No comments. Thank you.
all right. Commissioner comments. Maury, we're going to start with you.
I had no comments. Thank you. Nice presentation.
Ron. Ron, you're on mute.
No comments. Thanks, Tom. It was a nice presentation.
Steve.
Thank you. I hope this works.
That's kind of ominous. Betsy.
It's a tough location.
It is. It is. It's terrible. I think you should give it up, and I'll help him by taking it over. And it's the least I could do, right? I mean, All right,
Yeah,
Betsy.
I have no questions. It's always kind of a shock to go out and see what Mother Nature can do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kevin.
No comments other than best of luck.
All right. Jen, is there anything in the public chat function, please?
Nothing in the public chat pertaining to this project, Mr. Chairman.
All
And I'll
right.
make a motion to close the hearing and take it under advisement.
Driscoll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to close the hearing. Any other questions or comments? All right, we're voting to close the hearing. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Maury,
Carl Hawkeye.
Ron,
Driscoll, aye.
Steve.
Pat and I.
It is unanimous. We have closed this hearing. Thank you, Tom. Thank you,
Thank you.
Leo.
Thank you.
Next up, Stephen and Carolyn Anderson, 24 Little Island Road, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to enlarge the existing garage and construct a second story. Install dry wells, construct a landing and balconies, install mitigation plantings, and upgrade the existing sewage disposal system. Jen.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. One, I'm promoting Courtney Bird, so Courtney is joining the meeting, and two, Tom Bunker is still here with us to present his second project of the evening.
Still here,
Tom, if you would just stall for a second till Courtney's up,
sure,
please.
and give me time to open a file.
There you go. And there he is. All
All right,
right,
if you'd
Mr.
like-
Bunker, you're up, sir.
Okay, still opening.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Again, for the record, my name is Tom Bunker with BSS Design. Prepared this plan for Stephen and Carolyn Anderson at 24 Little Island Road, West Falmouth. I'll put my screen up so that you can see what I'm talking about. Always start with the town GIS map. So this is on the south side of Little Island Road, fronts on West Falmouth Harbor. In here, it's not the little part that's called Snug Harbor, which is closer to the Mashapaquet Creek Bridge under Nashawina Street, but it's a little west of that on the harbor. You have this property, this in the GIS, and the line, the blue area is roughly the 100-foot buffer, although it doesn't include the buffer to the coastal banks in this. It is in the velocity zone. Velocity flood zone. Here's our plan, different orientation. So we have a plethora of flood zones here. VE elevation 18 runs along the face of the bank and cuts across part of the patio. Up on this side, we have AE elevation 17 right here. Inland from that, over here, we have AE elevation 15 up on this lower ground here, and that goes to the 15-foot contour. And so all of this area is in flood zone X through here. But of course, there's the Falmouth, where is it, 25 feet there, Falmouth velocity zone. This line right, yeah, there, 25 feet velocity zone right there. And so all this slope being in velocity zone or being greater than 10% is a coastal bank. It's in the velocity zone, so it has a 50-foot zone A, which is right through here, which encompasses the entire house. There's also a salt marsh along here and here with a little bit of sandy beach in between, but the 100-foot salt marsh zone A runs here and encompasses the entire house. What else is there? There's a old marine railway underwater in there, which used to come up. There's a slope here, and it you know, there's also a coastal bank. In this location, it's overgrown with vegetation, where it says shrubs, and it's old nasty vegetation along this area here. And English ivy down all of this area, and here is a nice carpet of English ivy. And so on this, the demolition, existing conditions and demolition, we've shown an area of that, 350 square feet of English ivy to be removed. Has a septic system and some type of a leaching chamber septic system that is 56 feet from the top of the coastal bank in this location right here. And otherwise lawn all around and under these cedar trees in the front yard and all. let's see if I can go down to the proposed. So first up, I'll say we're proposing a septic system upgrade with the denitrifying septic system. And this is in this corner, farther from the coastal bank and farther from the wetland than the existing septic system, which is in this location. We did get a approval. Top of coastal bank is 84 feet from here to the top of coastal bank. And we did get a variance from the Board of Health for this setback from the top of the coastal bank for the septic system in this location. The number of bedrooms was questionable in this, but it was determined to have three bedrooms, but in this case, we were increasing it to 4, and we got the variance request from the Board of Health with the 4-bedroom septic system because we have a denitrifying septic system in here. We're proposing it now rather than wait. The town watershed plan is up to 2 decades away from when they will actually require these systems, and so we're proposing we put it in now. There is a very small amount of actual addition going on here. There's this landing and steps, and staff asks how much actual addition. The landing and the steps here are 15 square feet of addition right here. I didn't calculate this box window yet, but that's about 7 or 8 square feet. The only other addition in a velocity zone is this 2nd-story balcony right here, which is 22.5 square feet. So there's about 45 square feet of addition in the velocity zone. The garage side end of the house is being expanded in this location here, which is actually outside of the Falmouth velocity zone, this expansion. So the only actual expansion are these small areas right along here. We're also the previous requesting permission to maintain the rent station was not there. We had done a plan for the pier quite 10 years ago or something. So this rent station was not there at the time, and so we're requesting that be allowed. And that's I don't have the number offhand. About 8 square feet. I mean 16 square feet. There. 16.7 square feet here. And also the generator in this location, it is not raised. It's on the grounded elevation, 16.5. It's actually just out of the flood zone, which runs right through there, but the flood zone is at elevation 18. Being in the Falmouth velocity zone, that should be raised to 18 or 19 or something to conform to flood regulations. And also, as in the staff report, this should conform to flood regulations as far as being enclosed by sailcloth or the like, and not wood fencing. So it's a very small increase in the velocity zone, but there is increase in space in A zone, which requires triple mitigation, which we have the calculation down here. There are 218 square feet of increase in zone A times 3 is 654 square feet of mitigation planting required, which we have 350 square feet within where we're proposing to take out the English ivy. And I know the staff has questions about that. 554 square feet total here. 350 square feet of which is in English ivy, and then plus another 100, I believe, square feet. Should have been labeled there, but anyway, it works out to 100 square feet here in this location. Oh, there it is, 100 square feet. So we have that question by staff, if some trees from the administrative review got planted. There were two possible locations for either a tupelo or cedar, and one was right here near the flagpole, and there's not a tree there, and the other possible location they marked was over in this location near where we have the mitigation going on, and so I didn't see that there's no tree in either of those locations, and that's as they confirmed. And piece of information missing from that, there was the AR from 2013 referenced an email. Of course, I don't have that email, so I don't know where a tree was requested to be planted, so I couldn't verify if it was there or not, but if staff didn't find it, then I'm sure it's not there. And so, of course, we take so we put a condition on that the trees required from the administrative review would have to be planted as part of this project. So that's what's going on. I think I've covered it mostly, so take it down and take questions.
Thanks, Tom. Jen?
Thank you, Tom. Thank you for addressing the points in the staff report. We can condition a lot of those. Did you address our concerns with the placement of the mitigation?
Oh, yeah, well, one thing I as far as how to keep, I know that ivy is a terrible thing to try to get rid of, and a terrible thing, it's probably even, maybe it's even worse to try to plant mitigation in it. I felt that putting down strong filter cloth with a good layer of mulch would help keep the ivy from coming back up. But as far as, I didn't think that, I'd have to look again, I didn't think that the branches were that low growing. But I can, under the maple tree you mentioned, there's a large maple tree there.
Yeah, Tom, we're gonna
can-
need you to look for a different mitigation area. I mean,
Yeah.
you have the mitigation like surrounded by all this English ivy. I mean, it's like putting it, like you're placing it right in the middle of the English ivy, and then underneath this huge canopy, there's very low branches. Nothing's gonna grow there. So
How
I
about
think,
ferns?
I think we need to
Okay.
find another place for the mitigation that's not in the English ivy and not underneath a very low branches where it can survive. And I think there's enough lawn area that
There is, and I can do that fairly quickly.
we're gonna want to see that mitigation in that lawn area. Sorry. I mean, unless the board
Sure.
doesn't mind, but that's just staff's comments. Thank you for addressing the trees, the rinse station, everything else. And just for the record, you did submit your nitrogen calcs in accordance with FWR 10.03, which requires you to do the nitrogen calcs when you're within a 100-foot buffer to a coastal bank only, because you are doing an increase in design flow.
Yeah, and I'll mention that, yes, I did them, and I missed that part, but there is increase in design flow from 3 to 4, but it's
But you're putting in the nitrogen.
a reduction in the
Yep.
nitrogen due to the nitro system.
Yep. Okay. Thank you for submitting this. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Alyssa?
Nothing to add. Thank you.
All right. Commissioner comments? Courtney?
As far as the English ivy, I mean, that's nasty stuff to get rid of, and it seems to me if he could figure out a way of getting rid of the English ivy in that area, which is in the buffer, and plant it with natives, I mean, to me, that sounds like a good mitigation process, but that's just me.
I thought it was a good way to try make an attempt at getting rid of the ivy, but I know there's a lot more ivy. You kind of have to get rid of all of it or none of it, and it's
No, I mean, I
It's a
hear
lot.
you, but I mean, that's there's a real benefit to getting rid of it. And if you fill it up with if you get rid of it and fill that area with natives, I would smile sweetly, but
Courtney, but the problem is it's not just, he wouldn't be eradicating all the English ivy, and I agree with you in that respect, but he wouldn't be eradicating all the English ivy. It would only be like a quarter of it, if that. It's everywhere.
yeah.
Oh,
It's a really nice carpet of ivy, but not that ivy carpets are nice.
I'm well aware of it. It's all over my yard, so.
Yeah.
Okay, that's my only question.
Kevin,
oh, God, I wouldn't pretend to comment on that. No comments at this time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
all right. Maury,
No, it was I like the project, and the upgrade with the nitro. I think that's a good step forward. But I did see a little bit of phragmites popping up to it's right on the property line, so you just might want to have the owner keep a little eye on that. Just a couple little starters. So
Over to the east.
yeah, it would be by the Ross property.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and that's
Like right on, yeah. And I think maybe at some point to come back to us with a plan to eradicate that ivy. Just, it's not gonna stop. It's just gonna keep creeping and going.
maybe they can get together with Nat and see if they can do a joint venture if it's on his property also. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Okay, sounds good. Thank you. It was a nice project.
Ron,
Yeah, is that tree by the new septic system gonna survive? It looks like it's right on the edge of construction.
There are two that are right on the overdig comes up to the trees. I could move it one way or the other and make sure one or the other survive. I'd say if one or the other don't, we'll put a condition, we'll replace them.
Okay, thank you. I'm all set, thank you.
thank you. Steve,
I have nothing to add. Thank you.
okay. Betsy,
No questions or comments.
all right. All right, what are you thinking, Tom? Oh, wait a minute, I skipped a step. Jen, is there anything in the public chat function, please?
Nothing in the public chat at this time.
All right. Sorry, Tom. What would you like?
Well, it's not that I would like it, but if I need a continuance, I can move that over the lawn. I get you a plan tomorrow, but I know you have to have it ahead of time. If you need a continuance for me to move that over, I'll request a 1 or 2 week continuance, whatever's the minimum to.
Tom, are you gonna put it in the lawn area? If we
Yes.
condition it that it goes in the lawn area and you show it in the lawn area, then you don't need continuance. I'll condition it.
Okay, yeah, I'll move it over and I'll spread it out to the other side and the other lawn also and by the flagpole.
I would like, yeah, I would not do too thin because we don't want the ivy to overtake it, so.
Yeah, I know. Could we put in cut in a I don't even know if a root barrier would work.
I mean, we'd be
Just go
happy
right
to
over.
Tom, we
Yeah.
can meet you out there and talk about it before you submit the guy's plan, and we can still condition it if that would be helpful.
Yeah, that would be good. I mean, yeah, condition, I'll get a plan drawn if we look at it first, meet your staff out there and look at it.
We'll do that for you.
And check out the other trees. Like I said, there was some information on the earlier one about what type of tree it is, but we can decide on the trees and the mitigation.
Okay, why don't we do that, Tom? We'll condition it
Yeah.
for you. We'll meet you out there.
So I'll make a motion to close the hearing and take it under advisement.
Heard,
Driscoll
second.
second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to close the hearing. Any other questions or comments? All right, we're voting to close the hearing. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird eye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Maury,
Hello, Hawk's Eye.
Ron,
Driscoll, aye.
Steve.
At 9.
It is unanimous. We have closed this hearing. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you. I'll hang around.
Yeah, I'm gonna put you back in attendees, Tom.
Yeah, okay.
Just hang tight.
All right. Next up, continued requests for hearing under a notice of intent. John and Kerry Cover, 442 Acapesket Road, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to construct a detached garage and a pool. And for the record, this was never opened, so the quorum is all of us. Jen,
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I've promoted Mike Verselli up to present his project.
excellent. Mr. Borselli, you're up, sir.
Thanks again, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. For the record, Mike Borselli, I represent the applicant. With your permission, I'd like to share my screen.
Yes, sir.
This is a continued hearing, although it was never opened because there was some staff comments that we felt were best to address without opening, and then cover everything at once on this continued hearing. So that's why we did it that way, and I can go through that with you as I go through my presentation.
Excellent.
I'm sharing with you the existing conditions at 442 Acapesket Road. You can see there's an existing driveway, house, deck, patio area, licensed dock, unpermitted float, which we will be removing, by the way. More on that in a few minutes. The wetland resources, land under the ocean for green pond, land containing shellfish, a narrow band of salt marsh, a coastal bank, and the associated no disturbance zone A and outer buffer zone Bs to those resources are identified on the plan. We're also in land subject to coastal storm flowage, AE 12. And the landward boundary of that is the blue line here. The proposed project. So the proposed project is to build a detached garage with living space above, with a small pool directly adjacent to it. All of the proposed new structures are on the landward side of the existing house and the developed part of the lot. Most of it's in outer buffer zone B. Some of it's in some of the pools in the 100-foot no disturbance zone A to the salt marsh band that's down here. None of the proposed activities move closer to the resources than the primary structure. So we qualify under your redevelopment section FWR 10.18 for this work. We did an inventory of all the impervious surfaces. And the goal of the project was to design it in a way that we could remove some impervious surfaces to trade for the additions that we were proposing, so that there was no requirement for mitigation planting, because there isn't a lot of room for mitigation planting. This property was developed in the 80s and redeveloped in the early 90s, I believe, or in and around that time, when you had much different rules, and they built right on the top of the coastal bank, or adjacent to it, I should say. So when we did the impervious surface calculations, we did the color coding as we usually do. And we showed in blue what currently exists in the A and tabulated that, and in a tan color what's in the B and tabulated that. And we found ways to reduce impervious surfaces by taking out some pavement that's unused on the north side, taking out this walkway that leads to the formal entry, which no one ever uses. Everyone uses this side entry to the mudroom patio area. So they were going to just make this grass and very, very infrequent use, so there was an opportunity to take out some impervious surfaces here. And the net result of all of that, oh, and also we were originally proposing to remove this patio. And the patio blocks that lead to that patio. And we were feeling pretty good about having a decrease in impervious surfaces and having no mitigation required. But lo and behold, your staff in their sleuthsness found some old plans from the early 1990s. And they looked at the aerial photos, and my client fell victim to some activities that had been performed by a previous owner. And those included the installation of that patio that is shown here. This patio, which we were proposing to remove and take credit for, was never permitted. This stone wall was never permitted. And these patio blocks were never permitted. And that's clear on the near map aerial photos. And there's some very old documents in the Conservation Commission files that don't show any patio when they did the original house construction here. So we had to go back to the drawing board, which is the main reason we never opened the hearing. So we've been working with your staff to come up with some solutions. First of all, we're not counting this in any credit form for removal, but this patio and this patio block path to it are proposed to be removed. Not in an effort to get credit, just because they were never permitted. We can't take credit for something that was never permitted. So when you rework the calculations, we were in a big decrease. Now we're not in a big decrease, so we were looking for other ways. One way is we're removing pavement over here. That's surplus and unnecessary parking area. They have adequate parking, so we're trimming off impervious surfaces here. We're still removing the access walkway up to the door. And we were feeling as though we were right at a net zero in the math. The math yielded what we were thinking was a net zero, but then again, your staff pointed out we were still trying to take credit for removing the patio blocks that led to the unpermitted patio. It was unintentional, but we were still taking credit for the patio blocks that would be leading to an unpermitted patio, if that makes sense. So we have to go back to the drawing board and fine tune this one more time to make the mitigation work. And we're going to work with your staff to fine tune those numbers one more time. But we're very close. We're just not there, and we're going to find a place to trim some more. One of the elements of that patio that was installed without permission was a masonry wall was built. That masonry wall and patio were built in a place that on a 1992 plan had required there to be buffer plantings. And that shaded area reflects the area that was on the 1992 plan for required buffer plantings at the time. So not only was the patio installed without permission by a previous owner, the buffer plantings were basically ignored and not on site when we got involved with the project. So we're proposing to not only remove the unpermitted patio, but reestablish this buffer. That was back that was on a plan from 1992. So we revised the plans to reflect that. One thing we were hoping, and we understand if the answer is no, but if you don't ask, you don't know. That wall, the effort to take the wall out is extensive. The wall was a boundary around the patio. It serves no purpose for retaining. It was just an edging to the patio. The effort to take that out is, you know, somewhat expensive and disruptive. We were wondering if we could keep that wall in place and reestablish the buffer plantings in and around it. But if that doesn't make sense, we'll certainly remove the wall as well. The staff report, the initial staff report had comments that we've addressed. Will the driveway, portion of the driveway be replaced with lawn? We were gonna replace them with mulch and some plantings. Will there be any drawdown to the pool? The answer is yes. There may be an occasional minor drawdown to the pool for maintenance. It's usually less than 12 inches. And we're proposing dry wells for the garage. So the dry well would serve the purpose of a drawdown for the pool if necessary. If there was ever any need to completely drain the pool, they would contract with a water truck and pump the water into the truck, not and just refill the pool after the maintenance is done. We were asked to show some of the other additional trees and shrubs that were in the area of the proposed garage. This is an old original landscape screening buffer, and it's some junipers and a couple of hollies and arborvitae are in here. So we've shown those on the plan and shown them to be removed. There was a note about that narrow float at the end that's not permitted. We have a note on the plan that says to remove that float. And I'm sure that would be a condition. There was a reference to the old buffer strip from 1992. I addressed that. Then after I submitted the revised plan, there were revised staff comments that just reiterated about the float and said that we could work with staff to work out the details of the mitigation planting and the species to be proposed. And I think that I've probably said enough. And I think that sums up everything, the majority of the major talking points on this, and I'll turn it back over for questions.
Thanks, Mike. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Alyssa, can you take the lead on this one as I deal with the issue that I'm dealing with right now? Mr. Chairman, I'm trying to.
Yep.
Thank
See
you.
it.
Thank you.
Mike, thank you for addressing our original comments in the revised plan you submitted. It seems like you are addressing the unpermitted float. The stairs, as we discussed, were kind of a wash when they were slightly reconstructed. Patios to be removed. We were leaving it up to the board as to whether the wall can be permitted to stay. We've kind of seen some walls be required to be removed, some were allowed to stay, some even required mitigation. The wall isn't permitted. It's nice to know it's not retaining anything. So we'll leave that in the board's hands. Let's see here. Just our typical condition is mentioned that the violations are remedied prior to staff signing off on a building permit for the pool and garage. Mitigation species weren't listed, so we can work with the applicant on that. Even though the old mitigation is being proposed in the correct location, Mike took that from that old plan. It's still really close to the house. I know it was previously required, but at least so there's no concerns in the future, maybe reducing that so it is 10 feet off the house, giving that typical clearance limit of work we all like to see. I think that would be enough. And I think that's all we have.
Excellent. All right. Jen and or Alyssa, would that patio have been permittable?
When was it put in?
92.
90s?
Oh, I'm sorry. No, it's not 92. That was the old plan with the buffer. I don't know what year it was put in. You folks with the near map know that answer.
Would it be permitted now?
No.
It was installed after compliance was granted on the last project. I think that's how we weren't really aware of it because we weren't going on the property anymore for any reason. So I'm gonna say
Probably not, Jamie, because they don't have the room for the mitigation. Even though the deck
That's true.
extends beyond the patio would have required mitigation, and they just don't have the room for it.
2009 to 2011, so mitigation 10.18 was in effect at that time.
Yeah, so it would have been a 3-to-1 mitigation requirement.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. It wouldn't have been moving closer to the resource than the present primary structure, but you wouldn't have had room for the mitigation planting.
Correct.
And you have that deck, so you still have some space outside.
Outdoor space, correct.
Okay. All right. Where are we? Maury?
I just had a question, Mike, on the septic. They're
Mhm.
not proposing to put a D-night in?
No, the septic is out by the street, way beyond 100 feet from all wetland resources in Acapesket Road. It has adequate capacity. Acapesket Road is in the next sewer phase, so it could be sooner than later. So there was no plans to do anything with the septic system.
Okay. And there's no increase in flow?
There is no increase in flow. There is proposed bedroom space above the garage, but the septic system was designed to have adequate extra capacity. And that's been confirmed with the health department.
Okay, you should submit that with us, so I don't have to waste time, because I'm gonna ask it.
Okay.
If it was in there, I would have read it. And the other, I've asked before, Mike, when you put revisions, it just says revisions in response to Conservation Commission staff report. You should list the revisions. It just makes it clearer so that we know what you did change, because it just should be on the plan. Okay,
Yeah,
that's all.
point
Thank you.
taken. There were just so many, it would have been a big stack of revisions. That's why I did it. But I understand. Makes
All right,
sense.
that's all. Thank you.
Ron?
No questions, thanks.
Steve?
No, I'm sure you and the staff are gonna work this out. No questions.
All right. Betsy?
No questions.
Courtney?
No questions.
All right. Kevin?
No questions, Mr. Chairman. I think there've been enough. And they were all good.
Jen, is there anything in the public chat function, please?
Not pertaining to this project, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right, what are we looking at?
I think we're looking at a continuance. Right, Mike?
Unless you want to
Mitigation?
work out the details of the mitigation with the staff.
Oh,
No.
I think we need a continuance.
Okay.
Don't you, Jen?
Yes, Miss. Okay, next couple of hearings are getting really busy.
We'll need some time.
Good. Okay.
July 31st, Mike?
Yeah, because you're not meeting on the 24th.
What was that?
You're not meeting on the 24th.
No, we're not meeting on the 24th.
That's fine. We're before the Board of Appeals and that hearing is until July, and then there's until I think the 11th, and then there's And, it's fine.
Okay,
I would request a continuance till July 31st.
Bird,
So,
so moved.
Gladfelter second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to continue this until July 31st. Any more questions or comments? We're
No,
voting
thank
on the
you.
continuance. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye, Kevin,
O'Brien, I.
Maury,
Carla Hawk's eye.
Ron,
Driscoll, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous. We have continued this until July 31st. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Night, Mike.
Good night, Mike.
night, Mac.
Next up, Rachel Summer, 54 Cary Lane, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to conduct invasive species management and restoration. Jen,
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this hearing is, the applicant has requested a continuance until July 31st.
Bird, so moved.
Carla Hawk second.
all right, I don't know if it matters because it's a continuance, but I have Maury is not on this quorum. But I don't think it
I'll
matters
second.
for the continuance. So, never mind what I just said. All right. Questions or comments? We're voting on the continue.
Why is the
Yep.
request? What's the reason for the request?
Melissa?
I can address that. They are reworking their mitigation areas. Tom was unaware that there was a previous amended order that required additional mitigation, so he's just making sure it's all accounted for.
Fair enough. No other questions.
We're voting on the continuance. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye, Kevin,
O'Brien, I.
Maury,
Carla Hawk's eye.
Ron,
Driscoll, aye.
Steve.
Patton, aye.
It is unanimous. We have continued this hearing until July 31st. Brings us to Thomas Cooney, Cape Cod Condominium Trust, 28 Cape Cod Road, Falmouth, Mass, for permission to conduct vegetation management. And the quorum excludes Kevin, Steve, and Ron. Do I have that right, Alyssa? All righty. Jen,
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have promoted Tom Bunker up, Brian Wall up, and Brian, I'm assuming that is Mr. Sellers sitting next to you, so.
It is, Jim.
And Paul Sellers to present their vegetation management project at Cape Cod.
all right, Mr. Bunker, you're up, sir.
Actually, if I may, Mr. Chairman, may I proceed?
I'll be up, but I'll hand it over to Brian.
All right, Mr. Wall, you're up, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, and to you and the members of the commission. I represent the applicant in this matter together with Tom Bunker and Paul Sellers. And to remind the commission, the applicant in this case happens to be the Board of Trustees of the Cape Cod condominium, as well as 17 owners of individual units. The application, the NOI before you, seeks approval of a proposed vegetative management plan for the trees on the berm that's situated to the west of the building at 28 Cape Cod Road. In prior hearings, we presented evidence to the commission showing that there were no trees present on the berm when the Cape Cod Hotel was in operation. And similarly, there were no trees on the berm when the current building at 28 Cape Cod Road was constructed in 1999. There is a plan of record approved by the commission in 2004 that shows 8 trees on the berm. And the reason why we're here tonight is in the ensuing 20 years since 2004, the number of trees has increased to 115. And our position is that the unmanaged growth and multiplication of the trees has become problematic for 4 particular reasons. One is it has allowed invasive species to appear. There are numerous Japanese black pines on the berm, and these are on the state invasive species list. Number two, the trees, particularly the cedars, are seeding themselves in very close proximity to each other. This, coupled with the fact that the soil conditions of the berm are very poor quality and lacking in nutrients, is producing compromised and disfigured trees. Third, the increased number of trees is making it difficult for the continued implementation of the ongoing invasive species management that has been very successful thus far. And we've consulted with Teresa Sprague, who's in charge of that, and she's indicated that an increased number of trees will make it even more difficult to get in and around the berm to take care of the invasives. And fourth, as you know, the increased number of trees is impacting the historic views that have been enjoyed at this property. The NOI proposes to address these problems by managing the trees through selective removal and pruning. The plan that we've submitted is very detailed. It has action or non-action on all of the 115 trees. And as a result of that, at the initial hearing, the commission asked the applicant to meet with staff to review the plan to make sure everyone understood it, was on the same page, and also to understand the relief and the management that's being requested. So as you know, we met on the site on April 26th, and staff and the applicant and the experts walked the berm from one end to the other, looking at every tree upon which management was proposed. And staff actually supported many of the individual requests, including removal of the invasives, pruning of sumac and the beech plum, flush cutting some trees, removing some trees, and pruning others. We have prepared a plan that reflects these staff recommendations, and we have submitted that so the commission can clearly understand where the applicant and staff are in agreement. We met with staff to review that plan, and staff has confirmed that the plan accurately reflects the recommendations. And the reason why I want to say all that was an issue, one of the issues at the last hearing was, were there some discrepancies, or do we have a plan that shows what staff recommends? And we do. Having said that, I want to mention that the applicant greatly appreciates the extensive work that staff has put into this project. Although it only involves vegetative management, it's quite detailed, and there's a lot of work that's been put into this. And we also appreciate the staff's recommendations. However, the applicant does believe that additional management is warranted and would be beneficial to addressing the 4 problems that I just outlined a minute ago. At the last hearing, we set forth that management that was above and beyond what staff has recommended. And the feedback that was clear to us was that the commission felt that the applicant was more interested in the view preservation than in addressing the problems that I mentioned. So we asked for a continuance, and we went back to the drawing table. We reviewed our proposal again, and we have winnowed it down. We have a revised proposal that we're submitting to you tonight, and the applicant is now proposing management of only 12 trees in addition to what the staff has supported. There is a plan that we submitted to you that shows all of the staff recommendation and these 12 trees, and these 12 trees are highlighted in yellow, so you can see exactly where they are in relation to the others. The 12 trees we're seeking to manage includes removal of 7 and pruning of 5. And I would just again emphasize that these 12 trees we're seeking to manage are in the context of there being 115 trees on the berm. So essentially, we're about 90% in agreement with staff, and we're seeking additional 10% of management, which we think is de minimis. At this particular point, I'd like to turn it over to Paul to give you the details of the 12 trees, and I think it will just be brief and take a minute. Jen, can I just share my screen if that's okay, or Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
And good evening. For the record, Paul Sellers. I'm the certified arborist representing the Cape Cod Condominium Trust and developed the vegetation management plan for this property. So we are looking at some additional work, as Attorney Wall mentioned. And the first 4 trees you're already familiar with. They're those cherry trees that are at the bottom, the kind of at the towards the bottom of the buffer area there. And these trees, again, we would advocate for their reduction down to a stump level, allowing them still to sucker. And the reasoning behind this is that these 4 trees still overshadow a lot of the naturalized plant material that's developed in this area, the type of a habitat that we would rather keep and encourage. And we would be maintaining, again, that re-suckered growth at more of a juvenile level over the next several years to keep it is more of a habitat would be conducive with some of the animals, the mice, the rabbits that we see in that area. We recognize that we will be removing a certain amount of the canopies of those trees. And our proposal at this point would be to help mitigate that loss of canopy with the introduction of additional shrub species. And we're looking to, or we're advocating to add an additional 32 shrubs in and around the areas where we'd be reducing the cherry trees. And that would include 16 viburnums, 10 of the beach plum, and 6 additional bayberry. Those would be staggered along the edge of that buffer zone, and they would start to spill into that lawn area that's within the zone A. So we'd start to encroach into the lawn area and take away a little bit of that lawn area as well, and start to naturalize that edge. Just to give you kind of a depiction of what we're talking about, you can see the cherry number 2, cherry number 3, 4, and cherry number 5 that we're talking about removing. And then implanted in amongst those are the viburnums, the beach plum, and the bayberry. The viburnums would be more on the upper side of that slope of the buffer, and we would have the lower growing bayberries and beach plum below that, allowing the viburnums to be more of a buffer from wind to help them become more established. The other 2 trees that we're also looking to remove still are number 7 and number 8, 2 smaller cedar trees that again would just allow a better development of the canopies of number 6 and number 9. We just feel there's a bit of encroachment with those 2 trees in between them that would help us foster a better canopy development and shape on those 2 trees. Trees number 35, 36, and 37. Our goal is again to prune those and shape them, reduce them where needed to allow the canopies to become tighter and denser. This would also reduce some of the sail effect that's been impacting their form at this point. And then our goal is also to prune and shape tree number 38. This is an old stump sucker as depicted in the page. And this particular tree, this oak tree, has quite a bit of included bark at its base. And so we're trying to minimize, again, the height of that, reduce the size to minimize the sail effect or wind shear that's impacting the canopy, and avoid these included bark areas at the base from splitting and spreading apart. Tree number 64, again, is another prune and reduce. And this was just to help minimize the impacts from the wind hitting that canopy. And then our final tree was number 24. This is a removal. You can see it's kind of leaning at this point. It's a bit on the back side. It's completely desiccated and dead on the back side, and would just allow more light into the area below where there is an established plants of bayberry, cluster of bayberry in that area. So we're just trying to foster more light into that whole bayberry area. But those are the trees for your consideration beyond the staff's recommendations. Certainly happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Thank you. Tom, do you have anything you want to add at this point?
Well, just I think that they're getting a, I won't call it a deal, but I think with the trade-off with 32 shrubs for 4 trees, and some of which will occupy lawns, so be a small reduction in lawn area. I think it'd be a good thing. And still allowing the trees to grow and sucker and more, it would be more of a bush style, I think is creating a benefit. And I think it's I think it's a good plan.
All right. Jen,
Yes, Mr. Chairman, staff's position hasn't changed from the last hearing. I don't think it's appropriate, and I think it's a really dangerous precedent to set, allowing cherry trees to be cut and managed as shrubs. And then a number of the trees, if you look on your plan, a number of the trees are actually on the top of the coastal bank, and that oak is on the actual bank. And so we don't feel it's appropriate to touch those trees as well. So again, the staff's position has not changed. We, you know, to reiterate, we went out there, we kept an open mind. We reviewed every tree, all 140 plus of them. And I think the staff made great concessions to help the condo complex. But we are just standing firm now. Thank you.
all right. Alyssa,
Just a note on the proposed shrubs. In the planting plan by Blue Flax, there were 2 rows of shrubs installed along the edge of lawn for the vast majority of that area in question on the plan. Most of them did not survive. They were either outcompeted by switchgrass or other dominant grasses on the site, or perhaps weren't maintained. So even though these shrubs are being proposed as compensation for the cherries, they can also just be seen as restoration for previously required plantings of an old order of conditions. Thank you.
all right. Commissioner comments, Betsy,
I really don't want to be first,
oh,
but I look at a project like, I look at every project, I think a little bit differently from a lot of you. I go out and I say, what are the resources that are going to be impacted? And what roles do they play to improve the environment? And how are things going to change? And I know a lot of work's been put, I don't know anything about pruning cherry trees, so I'm not going to talk about cherry trees. But as far as the other trees, there are a lot of trees in those, there's still a lot of trees. And so it's still going to be the wildlife function, still going to function well for wildlife. And I don't have a problem with most of what, I mean, next year, things are going to change again. I mean, that's what's going to happen in these areas. That's what happened from no trees to 150 trees. So there are going to be new plants coming in here and there. So the bottom line is, I don't have a problem with this most recent proposal.
well put. That's why you're first.
That's all, Jamie.
Courtney,
I'm inclined to agree with Betsy's analysis. It's a tough thing. That whole berm was unvegetated from 1900 until the Cape Codder was torn down, and then, you know, sadly it wasn't maintained, and now they're stuck with the alternative. However, a good naturalized buffer has come up there and grown up naturally, and you want to preserve it. I look at that oak tree you cited that somebody cut down and then it suckered up and so on. And if you remove all the sucker branches and left the main one going, That would be a nice thing. But I think on the whole, you guys have done a pretty good job of trying to balance your desire to have some views and so forth, which is okay. With trying to have something reasonable. The problem, again, is, this is a dynamic thing. It's gonna change next year. And so what happens to new trees that come up? Are you gonna have to deal with that? I mean, what's your long-range plan here? That's all.
All right,
I can address that if you like.
not yet. So I think overall it's a good plan. I think you guys have put a lot of work into it. I think it's gonna take a little bit of deliberation and then, we'll see where we're at. Maury?
I agree with what you just said, Jamie, and with Betsy and Courtney. The diversity of maybe adding some more lower growth species in there from different habitat could possibly be a good thing. Large trees on coastal banks blow over and pull out coastal banks. We see it all the time when people want to revet or put in quarry logs, because the large trees on the edge of the coastal bank, when they pull out, they cause a lot of damage. So maybe the smaller, very, providing different habitat, different food sources. But I think we should deliberate over it. And I think that the staff especially has, they've spent unbelievable amount of time out there. And I understand how they're holding firm, because everybody's made concessions, and we're trying to make this work for everybody, the staff, how they feel, the homeowners, and us as commissioners. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Wall, Mr. Sellers, you had something to add?
Just in reference to, maintaining this in the future. I mean, our goal was to give you a 3-year vegetation management plan. The intention was we would be back before you in 3 years to revisit this plan or a revised plan specific to the changes that we anticipate, just as you do in this type of a habitat, because there are going to be other things that may be introduced. There may be other things that die off. An example, with the black pines that have been mentioned. So this is a dynamic in nature. It's something in 3 years that we fully expect you to come back out and look at us with and assess it the same way that we have through this whole process. We had mentioned the mitigation plantings that we're proposing, the 32. That's the type of thing we would expect you to be back out in the 3 years to see, what the viability of those plants, what they are in 3 years, what the mortality rate was. Do we need to change our thoughts on what plants or species we may have to put in there? So this is a long range, effort, just as the blue flax invasive species plan is. It's the same type of a thing, the way we're looking at it. This is just simply one approval, and then we don't expect to have to come back before you again. This is a long range commitment to maintaining this buffer zone.
Thank you, Brian. I think this is a question for you, because that's what my note says. Who's going to be performing the work? I assume Mr. Sellers is going to be supervising.
Yes,
Is that a fair
Mr. Chairman,
question?
that's correct. You actually expressed a concern, I think, at the first hearing about making sure that this kind of, detailed, delicate work is handled by a professional. And we actually submitted a proposed condition for your consideration that would put Paul Sellers personally in charge of the cutting, and we gave you some language to adopt.
Okay, I'm sorry if I missed that. Okay, this is one of those circumstances where, we would want to know if that vendor changes, and it's not because we want to influence who you hire or don't hire. It's a matter of we would want our staff, sorry, Jen, to meet with this, if it's a new vendor, so that we make sure they understand what we've all agreed to.
I
So
fully
just to say
understand
that.
that. I fully understand that, and I believe the language that I proposed mimicked some other language I've seen in prior orders that has exactly that stipulation. I think it says Mr. Sellers is going to be individually doing the work or supervising the work directly. And if there's any change of contractor, it would have to come back before the board.
Yeah, and again, we're not gonna dictate who you hire. It's just a matter of, projects like this can go off the rails because the new vendor didn't understand what, hadn't attended the meetings and all that stuff. So that would be a condition that I would ask for to be in there, that there's a staff meeting prior to, if there's a different vendor chosen. So I don't want to beat that to death. Alyssa, you had your hand up?
I just wanted to tack on to that conversation. It's been stated a couple times that there is still continued efforts by Blue Flax on the site, though that permit has expired, which will need to be permitted to some degree to allow that work to continue. I know that one of their activities is mowing. That's why there's really no new saplings on the site, is they just mow the site once or twice a year. So if the board is anticipating future trees to start growing, that needs to be acknowledged, and they need to be allowed to grow to some degree. And maybe that's part of the long-term management. We come back, we talk about how the site's developing, but I just wanted to acknowledge that.
Thank you. Jen, is there anything in the public chat function, please?
Not regarding this project, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Mr. Wall, Mr. Sellers, Mr. Bunker, do you have anything else to add at this point?
No, other than I appreciate the commission's review and all the staff's hard work on this.
So I'll make a motion to close the hearing and take it under advisement.
Bird second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to close the hearing. Last call, any questions or comments? We're voting to close the hearing. Betsy?
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney?
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Maury?
Carlo Hawks eye.
It is unanimous. With this quorum, we have closed this hearing. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, members of the commission.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Brian. Good night.
All right.
All right, next up, Town of Falmouth, Harbor Master's Office, number 12 Albatross Street, Falmouth, Mass. For permission to reconstruct an existing fishing pier in the same footprint. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this matter was continued because we did not have a DEP number. We have obtained that DEP number, so you are free to close the hearing.
Excellent. And before I skip the step, Betsy is not on this quorum.
I make a motion to close the hearing. Carlo Hawks.
Bird second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to close the hearing. Questions or comments? We're voting to close the hearing. Courtney?
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin?
O'Brien, aye.
Maury?
Carlo Hawks eye.
Ron?
Driscoll, aye.
Steve?
Matt and I.
It is unanimous. We have closed this hearing. All right, next up, request to amend an existing order of conditions. Stanislav Koplikov, 19 Meadowwood Lane, Falmouth, Mass. Request to amend the order of conditions for Mass DEP number 25-4859 to permit a reduction of required restoration plantings. Jen?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have promoted Bob Ament up to present this project. Bob, is there someone else with you tonight? Is Bob there?
No, I'm all alone, Jen.
Okay. Do you have a plan to share, Bob?
No, if you could share it, well, I could try, but I think it'd be better if you could show it. Can you do that?
He's not prepared for that, Bob, so it might take.
I'm sorry. Let me see if I can do it.
It's okay.
Did I do it?
Okay, so you want to go
Please.
down at the bottom, hit share.
Tell me again, Jen.
Okay, so down on the bottom, Bob,
Yep.
there's a thing to hit share. And then
No, not your bank account. Hey,
you're gonna see a
I get it.
screen and you're
No
gonna try to do
levity.
that.
How'd I do?
You did great, Bob.
Boy, and you get all the credit. Thanks an awful lot. Well, thank you. I'm Bob Ament, attorney for the applicant. Mr. Kaploko inquired of me if the order of conditions that required the removal of his existing fence shown on the plan might be changed. I told him I didn't think so, but I would come out to his property and take a look around. When I did that, it seemed to me that perhaps the buffer area applicable to the particular coastal bank on the property was a 25-foot buffer A, not a 50-foot buffer A. I wasn't involved in the earlier proceeding, and I point out that the clearing of this coastal bank on the property was apparently done by a prior owner and without permission. Anyway, staff, I believe, agreed with me that the coastal bank is not touching another resource area, and that the 25-foot setback applied. So we revised the plan so that it shows the 25-foot buffer A zone, but not a 50-foot buffer A zone. And by doing so, the existing fence, which is to control the applicant's dog, is not affected. We show not only the planting of the entire 25-foot A buffer, but we retained the plants going all the way up to 4 feet from the fence. So there are about 23 more bushes proposed on this plan that actually would meet the requirement. And we retained all 4 of the proposed trees that were shown on the prior plan. So we're actually trying to correct the prior submission, and I'd like to thank the staff for their help in putting this together. If there are any questions, I'll try to answer them.
Thank you, sir. Jen,
Yes, Mr. Chairman, do you want Bob to stop sharing?
I'm good with him not sharing, yes. Bob, you can stop sharing. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
I'm
Yes,
myself.
yes, Mr. Chairman, Bob came to us and we looked at the plan. The last plan had a 25-foot buffer, a 50-foot buffer, a 75-foot buffer. But then looking at the plan again and looking at the site, it does break, it doesn't touch the wetland. So the 25-foot buffer is the appropriate buffer for this area. The only question we have or concern we have is with the location of a tree, and we just need that shifted and we can condition that.
Well, I would like to point out, maybe you aren't aware, Jen, the surveyor, Colley Site Services, whom I only notified yesterday of staff's request that we move that tree, they were able to provide to me this afternoon the revised plan that shows the tree shifted and also shows the additional patio changes that were requested. So they were real quick to respond.
Excellent, thank you. No further.
Melissa,
We
Sorry.
received hard copies of that revised plan, so we're all set there. Thank you.
okay. All right. Commissioner comments. We cannot start, Betsy cannot be first. Steve,
Thank you. The only question I had was about the chain link fence and whether that was an issue for anyone.
Not to staffs.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Ron,
No questions.
Maury,
No questions, thank you.
Kevin,
No questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
all right, Courtney,
No, I don't have any questions either.
Betsy,
Nor do I.
threw you all off. I went backwards, huh? See?
I was
Gotta
impressed
pay
you
it.
could do that, Jamie.
Yeah, well, I had to write it down. All right, so Jen, is there anything in the public chat function, please?
Not pertaining to this project, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I'll make a motion to close the hearing and take it under advisement.
Bird second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to close the hearing. Any other questions or comments? We're voting to close the hearing. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird eye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawks eye.
Ron,
Driscoll, aye.
Steve,
Pat and I.
it is unanimous. We have closed this hearing. Thank you, Mr. Arment.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Good night.
Good night, Bob.
Good night.
Didn't think I could do that. Boy, no faith. Next up, James Bouchel, 4 Eldridge Drive, Falmouth, Mass. Request to amend the order of conditions for Mass DEP number 25-4929 to permit invasive species management and vista pruning in accordance with FWR 10.18 10B. Jen.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I am promoting Rob Dewar up from Bracken Engineering and Matt Lottenberger from Wilkinson to present their project. Evening,
Hi.
Rob.
Good evening. Again, my name is, for the record, Robert DeWar here, with Matt Lottenberger from Wilkinson. We are here on behalf of the applicants and the owners, James Bouchel and Deanna Bouchel. I'm just going to share my screen real quick. I'm going to give a little brief overview, just to bring everybody back up to speed. And then probably hand this over to Matt for the remainder of the presentation. So we have a property here at 4 Eldridge Drive. We're on the shores of Megansett Harbor here to the north. And under existing order SC 25-4929, the commission may remember this was about 6 months ago. The applicants did gain approval under that order to raise the existing house here shown in gray and construct a new dwelling here, the darker outline, with a deck and some stairs that come down. Along with that order, conditioned with that was a fair amount of mitigation area here, and then some additional restoration area along this section here, this cleared area along the coastal bank. So we have come in tonight with an amendment, a joint effort between Bracken Engineering and Wilkinson Ecological Design. There are a couple of minor changes on the Bracken plan in terms of grading in the rear here, just to slope this grading down around this corner, kind of marrying into the abutters yard here, as well as the top of this coastal bank, but also sloping down to the walkout here that is in this area and underneath this proposed deck. So in addition, Wilkinson has provided a really robust mitigation and planting and restoration plan for the bank here, with the goal of really creating a diverse native community here, as well as providing some additional stabilization on this bank, and maintaining the interests of the client as well. So With that all said, I know that staff did have some comments, so actually before I hand it over to Matt, just want to acknowledge that we will be addressing some of the additional comments from the staff report. But there were some preliminary, just minor note changes on the Bracken plan here, just it was like note 12 and note 15, just to be a little more consistent with the Wilkinson plan. And so we have made those changes, and we did provide a revised plan this morning, at least for those changes. We'll see, what transpires tonight. So with that said, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and hand this over to Matt, who can take over and talk a little bit more about Wilkinson's plan here for the mitigation and restoration of this bank.
Thank you, Robert. Again, this is Matt Lautenberger with Wilkinson Ecological. Just as a quick overview, in addition to the mitigation going on this site, there's also a pretty substantial knotweed invasion happening along the eastern side of the property. This connects to 8 Eldridge, which you may remember we got permitted last year with you, and this project will help eradicate what's left of that knotweed infestation. There are some, moving west from there are some upland invasive species, what you would normally see in this type of area, bittersweet, and other upland invasives that we're proposing to manage. And a major goal of this project is to establish native plantings that'll be able to slow down the erosion that's happening, possibly accelerated by the knotweed. There is some active erosion on the site, and we are hoping to, with the plantings, be able to slow it down so that the bush shells don't have to come back and ask for some sort of stabilization effort. So there are a couple of things that we're happy to address. First, there are some trees that need to be added. The staff comments pointed out that there were 4 trees that should have been added from a previous order. And then in addition to that, we're proposing to remove 4 here, and then I believe there were a few additional trees that were taken out during construction. We believe that 5 scrub oak placed towards the bottom of the bank would be sufficient to offset those. We're interested in getting your feedback on that because, all right, I already see Jen shaking her head. Is that scrub oaks, Jen?
No, just at the bottom of the bank.
Okay. Well, they don't have to be at the bottom of the bank. But we're happy to add those 5 scrub oaks somewhere on the bank. And then in addition to that, there was a comment asking us to remove switchgrass, and I just want to talk really quickly about why we include switchgrass. And to that end, I'm going to share here. So the main reason we include switchgrass, it's recommended by the USDA, it's recommended by the state, and it's recommended by pretty much any authority on restoration on the East Coast. The reason it's so important is because switchgrass roots go up to 9 feet into the ground, and particularly on a coastal bank like this, that root depth from the grasses, it's what's going to really hold the area together. I know that there are some concerns that switchgrass can get out of control. We've definitely seen that ourselves, which is why our seed mix is only 6% switchgrass. It's also worth mentioning that there is already switchgrass on site. It's more or less the only thing that the knotweed hasn't completely outcompeted where the knotweed is. So regardless of what we're doing, there's definitely going to be switchgrass on site. We'd like to leave it in in our seed mix, and generally we always recommend planting some switchgrass seed on a coastal bank. If the commission insists that they do not want that, we'd be happy to remove it, though I did feel it was our duty as ecological restoration experts to mention that the switchgrass is widely seen as a very important restoration plant. And I will leave my comments there to answer any questions.
Thank you, Matt. You can stop sharing.
Sure thing.
All right, Jen.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. How many trees are supposed to be on this site from the last project to this project?
I believe 4 is what I was told.
Okay, and where are they located on? They're not located on your plan yet, Matt?
The 4 that we have on our plan over on the west side of the property there on the corner near the house were for the 4 trees that we were proposing to remove. We understand that there needs to be more trees added, and that an additional tree that wasn't accounted for was taken off the site during the construction. So we were proposing to add another 5 trees.
Where are the 5 trees at? Those are the 5 trees you just said that you wanted to put at the bottom of the bank or somewhere on the bank?
Right. We would be putting them somewhere on the bank.
Somewhere, but you don't give us a location. Okay. Next time, please put the trees on the plan. I mean.
Right. We only found out
What's gonna
about those
happen is you're gonna
trees.
squish them off to the side.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We only found out about those trees yesterday through your comments, so we didn't have time to run anything by the client yet.
okay.
But we'd be happy to get you an updated plan. We could get it to you as soon as the end of the week.
Okay, well, we'll have to talk about that. And, you know, we're having problems with switchgrass. And, you know, that's why we're kind of pushing back as we see these sites. They become all switchgrass or all grasses. They outcompete the other shrubs. They're totally going to, sure, I'm gonna find sweet fern in here somewhere. Oh, no, I don't. Thank you. Matt.
There's no sweet fern on
Thank
site.
you, because I mean, we've gone to multiple sites from Wilkinson, from all the other ecological restoration experts out there. And the site we just talked about on Cape Codder, all the shrubs are gone, completely outcompeted with the grasses that have to be annually mowed.
Obviously, I
That's
can't
why
speak
we're
to
getting-
that.
No.
That was not one of our projects.
No, I understand it wasn't one
Not
of your
the point.
projects, but we've seen it through all the projects. That switchgrass kind of gets out of control. So that's why we're asking you to reduce the percentage of switchgrass and reduce its use because of it's just the aggressiveness of the grass. And
No,
I
we've
get
run
why you're
into
doing
that.
it.
We've run into that too, which is why our switchgrass used to be up at like 12%. It's only 6% of our seed mix now.
Okay, so I am still gonna have concerns with that until I see a project with 6% switchgrass and I see how it is after 4 or 5 years. So if you could provide maybe photos of a project you have with a seed mix of 6% switchgrass and provide me photos of that area.
Easily.
You know, I'd be happy to look at them and keep an open mind, but we're just doing this because of what we've experienced in Falmouth with the use of switchgrass. Like outcompeting hundreds of shrubs on a site. So that's why we're pushing back.
I understand that completely. Switchgrass is an extremely valuable ecological plant. Its presence on a site shouldn't be seen as a failed ecological restoration by any means. It provides food for birds, it provides habitat, it provides all of the things that you would need to. I see that you look skeptical. I'd be happy to provide you sources on this.
Yeah, that's fine, but why do you say like when you present a project to a board
Yes,
and you're presenting hundreds of shrubs
sure.
and then your seed mix contains switchgrass and then
Yes.
all the sudden the switchgrass takes over, it's aggressive, you're aware of that,
Yes.
and then it outcompetes all the shrubs. how is that not a failure of restoration?
I've not personally seen switchgrass outcompete shrubs when they're all planted at the same time. If you're saying that there are Wilkinson sites where that's happening, I'd love to hear about them. But I have not personally ever seen that.
Okay, so I'd like examples, Matt, just to kind of just show me.
Sure, I'd be happy
Examples would
to.
be great.
Yeah.
And I'll keep an open mind, but that's why we're taking a stance, is because we've
Understood.
fail in Falmouth. I do need to see a plan with the trees. I'm not just gonna, sorry, but we're not just gonna allow Wilkinson to place the trees wherever he'd like on the bank without us knowing actually where their locations are. And then again, I think Liz's comment is valid. You don't need to have a vista on this property. You're gonna, you're going to be completely redoing the entire bank. I wouldn't put a vista on there until the bank grows back up, regenerates, and you're.
Sure. The logic for including it now was just so that it could be on the record and be there officially. We're obviously not expecting to be going in right away and doing a bunch of view trimming.
Well, I also don't understand the point of a vista on a bank that you're just redoing the whole bank. I mean, you're gonna have like the whole bank is gonna be.
Right. For a couple of years. But our intent was just to get the vista pruning on the plan so that the clients wouldn't have to do a whole separate NOI.
We do vista prunings under RDAs, not NOs. And there's no, I don't even see any trees in here.
Well,
So, I mean, there are some concerns that we have with the, you know, the vista, the lack of the trees on the plan, the use of the switchgrass. You said you took care of the notes?
I did, yes. Yep.
Okay.
And we changed our tree locations to more coincide with Wilkinson's as well.
Okay. And one more thing, Matt, when you use the term regenerative pruning, I mean flush cutting it.
Nope, we don't intend to do any flush cutting on site. This is just
Okay, so
pruning.
what does your regenerative pruning mean?
Pruning entirely 100% for tree health. So getting rid of branches that are already dead, making sure that everything's growing in a healthy way and not into other trees. This is just for tree health.
So when you use the term regenerative, you are not cutting the tree down, you're not taking it out, and you're
Right.
just really just pruning it.
Yep, there would be no flush cutting. We're
Okay.
happy to have that be a condition on this.
Okay, thank you. That's
Yep.
all I have, Mr. Chairman. I really do want the
Alright.
location of those trees on the plan, Matt, so we can just
Okay.
evaluate it.
What's
Because
that?
Wilkinson doesn't do it, but you know, if we left it up to it, the trees would be like off to the side and
Right,
pushed under the canopy of other trees, and I mean,
right. Yeah,
we
like I
offer
said,
these
we
comments based on
Yeah.
our experience.
absolutely.
Do you want a revised plan before we close this?
Yes.
All right,
right,
we've been
Alyssa.
hoping to avoid that, but if you
excuse
guys
me.
insist.
Thank you. Just a couple follow-up notes. If the vista is removed, will those existing stand of sassafras just be regeneratively pruned?
Correct.
Okay. One thing that I find a disadvantage on notices is typically when we do a vista prune under RDAs, I meet on site with the arborist and discuss the scope of work. So if that were to continue, I would have wanted to meet you out there and kind of talk about what you would have done with the sassafras. So I just wanted to have an understanding. One thing I neglected to put on the plan is in terms of mitigation, there do not appear to be enough shrubs being proposed. For your square footage, you're looking at like 160 and I only counted 70 plus a couple trees. So as part of that revised plan, we'll need to beef that up a bit, and it's mostly rose right now. So incorporating some of the other species in your list would be helpful. And then if you can also provide me with an estimated percent invaded for the new aspects of this project, the remainder of the bank work, just so I can try to figure out if the amount of shrubs proposed there fall in line with the board's previous decisions. Does that make sense?
So if you take that 4,370 square feet and you remove the 600 square feet that's already well vegetated with those sassafras we mentioned, it's about 50%.
About 50%. Okay. Thank you.
And if you wouldn't mind just shooting us a number for the shrubs that you think we're missing, because I wasn't sure based on what you just said. I just want to make sure we get that total right for you.
Yep, absolutely. I can do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Commissioner comments. Courtney,
The knotweed, how are you planning to control it? I know you described it, but
Yep, we'll be doing our standard method, which is injecting it so that there's not a lot of foliar spray or anything like that.
yeah,
We
use glyphosate.
Yep.
And how effective is it?
First year you get about 80% control. By the third year you have in most cases effective eradication.
Yeah, I know that's nasty stuff, so
Yes. It takes, you really have to stay on top of it during those 3 years.
yeah. Okay. No other questions.
thank you. Kevin,
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
Maury,
I just had one question. It looks like there's some work being done on somebody else's property. Are they okay with it? I'm just looking at your property line.
Yeah, I'm not sure what you're referring to. This plan doesn't include any work on anyone else's property.
Well, where you propose conditions, the red hash mark, and maybe I'm just not reading it properly, but I'm looking at the bound, the dark black line with corner bounds. And then there's just this little piece that kind of juts out that's outside your dark black property line.
Towards the
Matt,
beach.
he's looking on
Toward
Rob's.
McGanson Harbor.
Yeah, do you mind if I just share my plan again real quick? I think I see the area you're talking
Yeah.
about.
please.
So it'd be to the northwest.
Yep.
I'm sorry, northeast.
Yeah, this area right here, correct?
Yes,
Yes.
correct.
Yeah, so that is basically still on the property line because they the way that the way that it works down to mean how water that they own. That's just the bottom of the coastal bank there. So it is still their property. It just doesn't look like it due to these are sort of the record lines based on the old plan. But the deed calls out, I believe, down to mean high water. So this line down here, actually, I believe they own out too, which would be the lines extend sort of perpendicular to the contour. So it actually kind of goes like that way and then this way. I believe
Right,
so.
because I know the Dowd property goes in front of it a little bit, if I'm correct, to the northwest.
I'm just going to zoom in, just on we have the GIS lines here. I don't believe.
I go by the land surveyor, not GIS.
Yeah, well, and we are land surveyors, so
Yeah.
in this area, that's just I believe that is still their property. Yep.
Yeah. I don't believe it, but if you believe it.
And again, this work is in conjunction with the neighbors over here at 8 Eldridge as well, to tie into the bank that they have restored. So they are fully aware of the work that's happening down here.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Ron,
No questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Steve,
No questions, thank you.
Betsy,
I just have a comment. I thought it was Matt's explanation of the use of switchgrass on coastal banks was interesting. And it may be one of these things that it's a kind of a plant that's very appropriate for some settings and not too appropriate for others. And we have seen places where we're just talking about flat areas where it has totally overtaken shrubs. But steep coastal banks are tough environments to keep in place. So that's my only comment.
Thank you. Jen, is there anything in the public chat function, please?
Nothing in the public chat pertaining to this project. Just one comment with Matt and the switchgrass and the shrub count. I think a lot of times maybe the switchgrass takes over because there isn't enough shrubs, I guess, to keep it in check. So I think maybe if we were to allow the 6% switchgrass, because I do understand what you're saying, but then beefed up that shrub count, it might work. And again, you can provide me examples of your successful projects, and I can provide you examples of where it's just outcompeted everything. And that's what we're trying to avoid. I'm not trying to be argumentative. I'm just trying to avoid what we've seen happen in Falmouth and some other areas. That's all. Thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments? All right, Mr. Dwyer, do you have a request for us?
Yeah, so based upon tonight's conversation, it does sound like you know, a continuance is in order. I would like just to ask one more time though, Jen, if Wilkinson and Bracken can coordinate with your office on the location of the trees and get approval, you know, through you and Alyssa, you know, with a provided updated plan that way, if that's something that could be conditioned tonight. So, I mean, if that's something that's possible, we would love to go that route, but we understand if it's not, and, you know, a continuance is required.
I think if it was just the trees we were talking about, Rob, I possibly could be swayed, but now we're talking about beefing up the shrub count and everything else. So I do
Yeah.
think a revised plan is warranted. I'm sorry.
No,
If
that's
it
all right.
helped at all,
It's-
we would just agree to take the switchgrass out now and put in as many shrubs as you guys need.
Trade.
Again, it's up to you, Mr. Chairman, but I'm not comfortable.
Okay,
No, I think we need a revised plan.
Okay. All right, with that noted, then, you know, we would formally, respectfully like to request a continuance. Sounds
Next
like the next,
available would be the 17th because we are completely slammed on the 10th.
yeah, it sounds like it. Okay, I guess we'll have to take that then.
17th of what?
July.
Why?
So at the request of the applicant, I'll make a motion to continue this to July 17th.
Bird second.
All right, Rob, does that give you enough time to do what you need to do? Matt?
Yeah, I believe so. Yep.
Okay.
That should be plenty.
All right, we have a motion and a second to continue this hearing until July 17th. Any other questions or comments? All right, we're voting on the continuance. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird eye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Maury,
Hollow Hawks Eye.
Ron,
Driscoll, aye.
Steve.
At night.
It is unanimous. We have continued this hearing until July 17th. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
See you guys in a few weeks.
All right, next up. Hearings under an enforcement order, and I'm gonna do my best on this name, no disrespect intended. First up, William Magalos and Samantha Magalos Almeida, 53 Sandpoint Shores Drive, East Falmouth, Mass. Unpermitted clearing and construction of a retaining wall within the buffer to a wetland. Jen,
Yes, Mr. Chairman, they were in the audience. Staff is having. There is a bit of a language barrier. I do believe the homeowner speaks Portuguese, so we've been trying to communicate with them. They did have someone in the hearing tonight. They were, the property owner was here. They did have someone with them to translate and help them communicate with the board. Unfortunately, that person needed to leave for personal reasons. It's what I was frantically typing that hearing where Alyssa had to take the lead on that. I was trying to communicate with them, and so they needed to leave the hearing. So they will be joining us again on July 10th to address this issue.
We need to have
I
a
had
formal
looked down and
continuance.
see how busy we were on the 10th. I would have pushed them to the 17th, but it's going to be the 10th.
all right, so we need to formalize that, correct?
Correct. I need a vote.
Okay,
I'll make a motion to continue this enforcement order hearing until the 10th of July.
Driscoll second.
all right, we have a motion and a second to continue this hearing until July 10th. We're voting on the continuance. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird eye.
Matthews, aye, Kevin,
O'Brien, I.
Maury,
Carla Hawk's eye.
Ron,
Driscoll eye.
Steve.
Patton and I.
It is unanimous. We have continued this until July 10th. Next up, Richard and Mary Denicola, 59 Sandpoint Shores Drive, East Falmouth, Mass. Unpermitted clearing and construction of a retaining wall within the buffer to a wetland.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I am promoting both Richard and Mary DeLacola up to address the issue, the enforcement issue. Okay, there's one.
What are you doing?
Hello, Ms. DeLacola. I'm trying to promote Richard up as well.
Oh, he's not available right now. He has to take care of his mother.
Oh, okay, that's why
On
he keeps
here.
declining. Okay, sorry about that. I
That's
just
fine.
see him in the attendees, so I wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess we can present, Alyssa can present the findings, Mr. Chairman, like we always do, and then give the the property owner a chance to respond.
Please.
So I'll probably be giving a similar presentation next week, so I'll stick to the highlights here. On May 8th, we were contacted by Mr. Denicola regarding his property and the abutting property. The homeowners on the abutting property who were here, they had increased their driveway, added some fill, and installed a retaining wall. Unbeknownst to them, they had actually cleared 20, 30 some odd feet onto the Denicola's property. It was that day that they had a surveyor out there and realized that and understood the ramifications that were occurring on the wetland through the construction of the retaining wall. Significant amounts of sediment and potentially some of the fill had been eroding down the bank and into the wetland. We were able to make contact with the abutter later that week, and it was addressed in an email to stop work, lay down some jute matting on the bank, some hay bales, silt fencing, some kind of erosion control to keep that erosion from progressing. As you can read in the staff report, no action was taken. The exact reasons we have not been provided. Throughout this process, I have been in touch with Mr. Denicola. He's been able to provide me with a couple updates when I haven't been able to visit the site. At this point, though the work takes place on both properties, it was performed by the abutter. Neither property has installed any type of erosion control at this time, though I do know the abutter is actively working with an engineering company to at least start getting a survey for the property. So because the work takes place on 2 properties, we had to advertise both properties, and I wanted each property owner here before the board just to sort of understand the ramifications of what's going on, and for the commission to visit the site and see the violation at hand. Jen, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, only I'd like to stress that both properties do need to control that erosion into the wetland. It's pretty bad.
I agree. I agree. And the wall is still up on our land.
Kind of the base of the wall, correct?
The footings and 2 feet of the wall itself, and then the footings are still up. The footings are
Okay.
still, he didn't take those down. But if I know what to do and how to put that fabric down or whatever, I certainly would do it myself.
We can offer you some guidance with that, ma'am.
Okay.
We can. Do you have, I know you did a survey of your property to determine whether or not that wall had encroached on your property, correct?
Yes, yes.
Has the surveyor come back out? Let me rephrase that. Did the surveyor? Alyssa, have we seen that survey?
I believe it was only the property line
was
that
the
the
property
Denicolas
line.
had
That's what I
surveyed, but it is
Had
the
the one
same
line.
it's the same surveyor who did that line, who's now working. It's been said that they have been hired by the abutter.
Yes, they did that. So I saw them there. So they did that survey last week, I believe.
Okay, so they're gonna have to come back out to your property and survey the encroachment, like the damage done to the buffer. So you have a survey of just the property line and maybe where that wall is, and our surveys are a little bit more detailed. So the survey probably needs to be updated, so we need to know, as far as you can tell, Alyssa, is there any restoration that needs to be done on the Delacola property?
I do know that Mr. Denicola mentioned that they were not a fan of the tree removal that has occurred for the expansion of the driveway, and I believe he mentioned your daughter was really into plant life and vegetation, and you actually have the intentions of replanting that area. There were some trees cut down the bank. At this time, the survey will help identify what the buffer zone is in terms of zone A's. The land is a zone 2, and that is a wetland. So typically, as we see, BVWs have a 100-foot zone A in zone 2s. So it might end up being required that that area is restored and just approved by the board in terms of species that you would be interested in putting back, or someone was responsible for putting back. The physical retaining wall would on the abutting property would need to be determined if it could be approved in its current location, and it appears that they had even built a wall prior to that. I just don't have record of that in the file. So not only are we determining what amount of restoration is required, but can we even permit the fill and retaining walls that have been constructed without permits?
Right.
So
basically the survey is needed for more answers.
The same line or?
No, we need to survey. We need to see where the wetland boundary is, where the wetland buffer is, the area that was cleared. So again, our surveys are a lot more detailed than just like a regular plot plan with the property boundaries. We need a more detailed plan. They'll have to send a wetland scientist out there to mark the edge of the wetland, and then we'll need to put that 100-foot buffer zone and determine how much disturbance was done in that buffer zone by the neighbor. And unfortunately,
I have to pay for it, right?
well, that's a civil matter between you and your neighbor.
Okay,
If it's the same survey, that would be a little more efficient, would it not? I mean, if, I don't know.
they had the same surveyor as we did. Just last week, we had ours done about a month ago.
Mhm. So that's gonna be required in order to determine what needs to happen. Is that survey is really important because we need to know what that buffer zone is and what disturbance took place in the buffer zone.
But that's gonna be the same thing for the other property.
Correct.
And that really should be the starting point, no?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. But what we're more concerned about right now is the continued erosion into that wetland. It's not being contained.
Right.
And that has to happen because it will be more costly for both parties if you have to go into that wetland and start carefully removing the fill that has migrated down in there. You want to stop that erosion because it will end up being a much more costly
yeah.
restoration if you have to remove it.
All right.
So, Ms. DiNicola, if staff can give you some guidance on some erosion control, would you be amenable to getting that piece started on, at least on your end?
Sure, sure.
I mean, because, you know, I mean, that's going to help you in the long run as well, because, you know, prevent any further damage. So I don't know if everybody wants to comment, but it just sounds like we should continue this till after the next one, correct?
Correct.
So the first one comes back. Do we want to continue it to the same evening, or do we want to hear what that is first and then, because we really need the survey.
Yeah, we really do need the survey. And in between the hearings, ma'am, we can meet with you. We can meet with your husband. We can tell you exactly what is going to be needed going forward. We can go out to the site, show you how to, you know, tell you what materials you need to stabilize it, and give you some guidance moving forward before the next hearing.
Okay.
Unfortunately, your neighbor, they needed to go, and there was nothing I could do about it.
Right. No, that's, yeah.
And I would put you on July 10th with the neighbor, but we are completely,
Yeah.
we'll be here till midnight. So I'd rather not do that to you or
Yeah.
your neighbor. So I say,
That's not practical anyway, right? I mean, because we should hear that other one and get that.
yeah. So I say we can either move this to the 17th or the 31st. And in the meantime, ma'am, we will meet with you and give you guidance about how to get started so that the next hearing you'll be well on your way and we can get this wrapped up for you.
Okay,
You
thank
wouldn't
you.
want to be planting until the fall anyway at this time of year.
Yeah, no.
So we have some time. We just need to protect that little wetland and protect you from any further like costly measures that might have to take place.
Right. All right. Thank you.
Not a problem. Would you prefer the 17th or the 31st, ma'am?
What do you think? 17th is fine.
I'll make a motion to continue this enforcement hearing until July 17th.
Chris will second.
Second.
I think that makes the most sense. Jen or Alyssa, if you guys have access to the other homeowners to try and get them to do some erosion control and or get started on the survey?
The translator I was communicating with over chat, I asked them to call the office tomorrow to give us their contact information so we can start a more efficient line of communication with the property owner.
Yeah, because I mean, that's gonna help this whole situation get resolved better. And if we can get the erosion control number one and then the survey number two, and then, you know, that'll make everything easier on the DiNicolas.
Absolutely. We have been
Okay.
attempting and trying to communicate with the neighbor.
I didn't mean to imply you weren't. I'm just thinking out loud.
No, I understand.
Okay.
It's just
So we have
very
a motion.
frustrating because they encroached on us and, do you know what I mean?
No, I understand, ma'am. We see this more often than we'd like to. This isn't, you know, this isn't a new scenario to us, unfortunately.
Yeah.
It does happen and it's unfortunate.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
that's all right. Well, thank you for your input.
Thank you.
I'll do the best I can.
Yeah, we'll be in touch.
All we ask.
All right.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
All right. We have a
Probably
motion
more-
and a second to continue this until the 17th. Any other questions or comments? All right, we're voting on the continuance. Betsy,
Gladfelter, aye.
Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Maury,
Carlo Hawks eye.
Ron,
Driscoll, aye.
Steve.
Aye.
It is unanimous. We have continued this until July 17th.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up, vote orders of conditions. Carden Realty Trust, 87 Santuit Road, North Falmouth, Mass. And for the record, the quorum excludes myself and Maury.
Hang on 1 second, Mr. Chairman. I'm gonna.
Doesn't
Hang
this
on.
exclude me too?
Were you out on the 12th, Betsy?
I was in England on the 12th.
Then you're
Okay, I'm
excluded.
sorry.
Do we have a
This
quorum?
also excludes Betsy.
Do we have four? Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good night, Betsy.
Good night. See you all next week.
Oh, you
Good
won't.
night, Betsy.
We're
I
off
won't?
next week. We're off
No,
next week.
no meeting next
All
week.
right, I'll see you all in 2 weeks.
Okay.
That's gonna be a long, long night. Um,
I'm not feeling well. I don't think I'm gonna be here.
Yeah.
Wow, did you see that
Dr.
look?
Sunroom over an existing deck, portion of the deck will remain. We're doing some dune restoration or some invasive species removal in the dune. We're going to replace the paved driveway with pavers. And then Morse Engineering did the plan and Angela Tanner from Crawford Land Management did the restoration plan. So I think after we got the revised plan, a lot of, like, most of our, all of our comments and issues were addressed, so. I don't have any notes on anything specific that we wanted to see, unless somebody else does. It was the removal of the black pines and the dune.
Anybody have anything?
No.
All right, what are you thinking?
Make a motion, to close the hearing? No?
No, you want to issue an order of conditions as discussed.
Driscoll, second.
That's what I wanted to do.
Close enough. All right. You have a motion and a second to issue an order of conditions. Anything else? All right, you're voting. Courtney,
Bird, aye.
Kevin,
O'Brien, aye.
Ron,
Driscoll, aye.
Steve.
And I.
All right. With that quorum, you have issued an order of conditions. Last motion, who wants it?
Make a motion to adjourn. Whoops,
Mr. Chair?
there's a hand up.
Oh, we
Wait.
have one.
I'm
more-
sorry.
One more thing, Mr. Chairman. We inadvertently. We all
Oh,
missed it when we looked at the agenda. We had, thanks, Alyssa. We had scheduled the 49 Grasmere enforcement order to this evening. We missed putting it on the agenda. 3 of us missed it. We do need to reschedule that and re-advertise that because we are, we didn't hear it on a date certain, so I recommend July 17th.
Does that require a motion?
Yes.
So I'll
So
move.
moved.
All right, second.
All right, so the motion and the second is to continue that until, that was 49, right?
Correct.
Continue it until 7:17. Questions or comments? All right, we're voting on the continuance. Courtney,
Bird eye.
Matthews, aye. Kevin,
O'Brien, I.
Maury,
Carlo Hawks Eye.
Ron,
Driscoll, aye.
Steve.
And I.
All right, is unanimous with this quorum. We have continued that enforcement until 7:17. And a reminder, we're not meeting next week. Happy 4th of July, everyone.
Oh,
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Driscoll,
Carlo
second.
Hawks second.
Okay. Bird eye.
Matthews, aye.
O'Brien, I.
Carlo Hawks Eye.
Driscoll, aye.
That and I.
It is unanimous. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Happy 4th.
Good night.
Happy 4th.
Thank you.
Good night, guys. Happy 4th.
Good night.